Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to participate in this meeting and for the work you're doing as part of the steering committee. I think with this meeting, we'll start getting into the meat of some of your tasks. If we could, just for sake of trying to be a little bit more personal in spite of the virtual meeting, if everyone could introduce themselves, and I'm going to give you a question to answer, a task. One of the common themes in our responses was the small town feel of Woodfin. So as you introduce yourself, and then in a brief sentence, state what small town feel means. So we'll start with Linda, you're first on my gallery, so and you look most perplexed.
Think about it, huh? Small town. I don't know. I grew up in small town, so Woodfin's a long ways from my experience. I remember bicycling all over the place, not locking doors. I mean, I have a different probably history with small towns than some of the people on might do a better job of reflecting about our current situation.
Okay. Ken, you're next on the gallery that I have. So.
Okay, fair enough. I did not grow up in a small town, but I did spend, depends on what you define as small. I spent probably 26 years raising a family in a town of about 9,000 people. That's kind of small. I think a lot of it is about connections and knowing a fair number of your neighbors. I like not locking your doors, but that could also be extremely rural as well. I think it feels to me like it's easier to make connections. It's relatively easy to get around. That the amenities of the town have a distinctly local flavor, and there are very few chain stores. That the businesses are pretty local for the most part. That's probably enough for my turn.
Okay. Well, Kenny, you're next on my gallery.
Yeah, I second what Ken said. I think it's has to do with how close knit the community is. Everybody's kind of relying on each other, and community success means the same thing for everybody. So to me, it's sure it's about a slower pace of life maybe, but mostly it's about connections to everybody else in the community.
Okay. And Amanda, you're next.
What was the prompt? I think I missed it.
Okay. One of the common themes and responses on the survey is that people like the small town feel of Woodfin. So describe what small town feel means to you.
I guess inclusion, like always feeling like you belong. Feeling known, I think is in my background, people wave to each other and knowing each other. Also knowing where to go, like how to get around feels like a nice thing too.
Okay. And Linda, you're next. You're muted.
I just have to get to the right place on my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to capture a few notes. I grew up in a small town, relatively small town, and I think of it a lot of the same things. I think of it as a place that you can, walkable place. You can walk around your neighborhoods and your people that you know people all around town, so you feel comfortable. So there's a good sense of community there. And yeah, I think, and I echo the other things that have been said.
Okay. Adrienne, how about you?
Well, everyone's kind of touched on what I think of when you say small town, and I grew up in a small town. But Glenda mentioned bicycling, and somebody else mentioned knowing where to go, getting around. And in addition to connectivity with your community members, I think it's also about connectivity of the town itself. And it's, you just know where to go. You know how to get there.
Okay, okay. Has anyone else joined the meeting? That's all you're all the ones I show my gallery list here. I guess.
I think
Okay.
that's it. We were, Judy was gonna come, but she's not gonna make it. I'm not sure about us. And then, I
Will
think
is
that
out of town.
covers it.
Yeah,
Will's out of town.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
And,
I know Scott has a county meeting.
okay, okay. Well, looks like we'll either have a long discussion with just a couple members or short discussions. I guess I should answer the question too. I grew up actually 6 miles from a small town of about 5,000, and I think it was the connections, both as a lot of people mentioned, the social connections as well as the physical connections, of knowing people and anticipating where you could see them and how to get around in the town, and riding bike to town. And as long as my mother didn't catch me, having a great deal of fun because she didn't want me riding in such a busy area. So, and one thing that impresses me about Woodfin is that people still know each other. And it's amazing that in July, it'll be 33 years since I moved to Asheville. And now I walk down the street and I don't recognize a person typically, which is makes it nice to, when I do come to Woodfin and hang out. The first thing we're going to do is look at the, unless anyone has a question or an issue, we'll go on to the project update. Okay, we'll go to the survey results first. I'm going to go back to the beginning here. Hopefully. We've got a good response rate. Do you want to go over these, Kenny, since you've done all the work, or do you want me to do it? Got my notes ready. I just want to be nice.
Go for it, Gerald.
Okay. 672 responses as of the end of last week, which is I think a great response rate. And of those, approximately 460 have been complete. All the questions have been answered. Going down to the telling where people are from. 73, a bit over 73% are Woodfin residents, and almost 7% are Woodfin business owner, which means that about 80% of those responding have a close tie to Woodfin, either living there or having a business there, which I think adds to the validity of the comments that we've received and the results of the survey, because these are folks who spend their time in Woodfin, pay taxes, and are an essential part of the community. How long have you lived or owned a business in Woodfin? Almost half of that of the respondents have been in Woodfin at least 5 years. I think that's good. But also what's interesting here is that 32%, the greatest percentile, are fewer than 5 years, which I think shows that people are moving to Woodfin. There's a lot of new energy and new outlook among the residents of Woodfin as the town has acquired new citizens and residents over the past 5 years. And if any of you have questions as I go through this, please speak up and we'll try to answer them.
Hey, Gerald, I think you need to share your screen again. I just see the agenda.
Oh, okay. Oops. That's right. I'm sorry. I forgot every time you do this. Let me stop. New share. I'm sorry. Thanks, Kenny, for letting me know. Is that better? Okay. Learn something new every day. It's still, life is still a learning experience. Yeah. part of the reason, if you live or own a business in Whitman, what are the reasons that affected your decision to live in or have a business in Whitman? And again, here's where that small town feel came up. Small town feel is just over 36%. Access to outdoor recreation, just over 31%, and access to the French Broad River, 27%. So there it's the small town feel and the access to outdoor activities are big issues here, and is what drives people to live or work in Woodfin. And here's something I found interesting as I went through this. If you look at the individual responses, two things were mentioned mostly: close to Asheville and affordability. I think those are key elements in driving people to live or work in Woodfin, that access to a bigger city. And some of them stated pretty clearly they have access to Asheville without the cost of Asheville, and the affordability of the homes in Woodfin is a big issue, and something that we'll have to are addressing in the comprehensive plan. And there are lots of I'm going to scroll through here quickly, but there are a lot of individual responses with regard to why each Woodfin was selected as a place to live or have a business. And do you pay property taxes to the town of Woodfin? 71% of our taxpayers and 29% do not pay taxes. It could be renters, and this is again property taxes. So there could be renters or lease a business space as opposed to owning it. And your age, and two big age groups are 35 to 44 with 22%, and 65 to 74 with just over 21%, almost 22%. So we've got a good number of responses from people in the, I guess, almost middle age, and then a good number of responses from older folks. The ones we're missing are the 20 to 24, which is pretty low, and all other age groups, it's fairly well scattered as to the percentage of respondents in that age group. And the town's highest priority is Woodfin grows or changes. And there were 9 items here, and what I've done is highlighted the top 3. And what really stands out is, the protection to manage growth. It's, number 1 is protecting natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas. Number 2 is managing population growth and new development. 3 is improving transportation infrastructure, including the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So it gives a clear direction, I think, on what Woodfin needs to aspire to, and will help us informing some goals and recommendations to be undertaken as a result of this planning process. There was not too much of a drop from number 3 to number 4, only about 100 responses that differ the ranking, and that's expanding access to parks in the French Broad River. Again, the importance of outdoor recreation and the French Broad River show up again in the responses. 6 most important land use and development priorities for the town, and the top 3 are, 1 is regulating undesirable land uses, and the top one is protecting steep slopes and floodplains from development encroachment. And second one is updating the zoning ordinance to better manage development. And going back just a bit, the number 3 on this is the regulating undesirable land uses. So there's a lot of thought and attention that the town needs to better manage that growth and protect the natural resources that define the character of the town. Next question was, what should be the 6 most important economic development priorities in the town? The top six or top three were one of those top three is leveraging natural resources for outdoor recreation tourism. Again, the importance placed on the natural resources of the community and taking advantage of those. Top one was encouraging redevelopment of underdeveloped and rundown properties. And there were comments about some of the properties from the Clark brothers to some of the mobile home parks in the community. The need to upgrade those, and then evaluating the development potential best use of publicly owned properties such as Old Craigie Prison and the old landfill property, which represent some opportunities for the town to develop those properties in a way that benefits the community. Six most important infrastructure and service priorities for the town of Woodfin. And the top one was improving and upgrading utility streets. And these all seem to could almost be lumped in one category, and that's infrastructure improvements. And number one was improving and upgrading utility streets and other infrastructure that meets the needs of existing development. Number two was replacing aging water infrastructure, including hydrants. And a close third was improving street maintenance. So again, just that emphasis on improving and upgrading the infrastructure in the town. A fourth one was, which was pretty close. Number four was improving the town transparency and communication on news, events, and alerts to citizens. I know the town is working on that. So next question. Six most important transportation and mobility priorities for the town. These have a great deal of emphasis on improving the alternative transportation modes, walking and bicycling. The expanding opportunities to safely walk or bike. We're 70%, got a 70% ranking. Providing pedestrian bike connections to the French Broad River is almost 62% ranking. The third one was extending the greenway. And one that I thought was interesting, which was number four, was requiring installation of sidewalks as part of new construction, realizing the importance of pedestrian connections and the attitude that those who develop properties should provide opportunities for pedestrian activity. And now the one that interested me was the investing in greenways from Woodfin to Weaverville and Asheville to make those connections to the adjoining communities. Again, a lot of emphasis on alternative modes of transportation. Next, which should be the six most important parks and recreation priorities. And the top ones include continuing development of Riverside Park and similar facilities, and improving the maintenance of existing parks, and providing pedestrian bicycle connections again down to the French Broad River is a high priority among the respondents. Next question, six most important community development priorities. And these, a lot of emphasis on improving the appearance of gateways and also taking advantage of the French Broad River with hosting festivals, arts, and cultural events along the French Broad River being a high priority. Beautifying key gateways with signage, landscaping, and public art. And improving the appearance of street corridors through landscaping and lighting. So again, improving those entrances and the corridors through the town and taking advantage of the French Broad by providing activities along the parks along there and cultivating a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere. I think Amanda mentioned the inclusive aspect of small towns and welcoming diversity, and this is reflected in this comment from the community. And things that make you most excited about Woodfin's future I'm not going to go through all these. I leave these for you to review yourselves, but a lot of it was just the opportunities that people thought and existed in Woodfin and the new direction that they think the town is taking. So, again, I'm not going to read all those. I would encourage you, if you have time, to take a look at these and just get a feel. Let me get the Dropbox thing. A lot of comments from folks. So, and the final question: anything you could fix, clean up poorly maintained buildings, addressing things, and improving the development review process and the development standards for the, I guess, the key responses here. We got, again, a lot of responses, so we'll be going through. Okay. Any questions on the survey results? If not, we'll go on to the, just at this point, I'll just state that your comments on the draft plan intro and background, if you have any, please send them on, because we want to wrap that up pretty soon and move on to the description of the community input and start developing the goals and recommendations. So if you have any comments, please send them to Adrian, Linda, Kenny, and myself, so that we can make the revisions that are needed and move on to the next stage. I'm going to put Linda on the spot now again, and just ask her to give an update on the community engagement and outreach.
Okay. Well, the main thing that we've been trying to focus on is reaching out to more of the Hispanic community, the Latinx community. And Kenny really helped get the survey, the Spanish survey, online. And I know that I sent that out to all of you, and you saw that, and hopefully it's getting spread around. I don't think we're hearing too much from it yet, but I haven't seen any results from that yet. Couple of my best contacts in the community have been away. One of them, both for vacation reasons, and then one got stuck in Portugal with COVID for an extra week. And so we've got some ideas, and she's got a lot of she's a physician and has a lot of Latino customers, clients. And so we've got some ideas about going to the two churches that most of them go to, and that's the St. Eugene's and the Asheville Catholic, and setting up a table after Mass, the Spanish Mass, and trying to get people to fill out surveys or talk to them. And also just do some more of, kind of grassroots outreach. And if we need to, we'll try to pull together some focus groups, because we really haven't heard from that community at all, even though we've been putting it out there in different ways. And the other thing is, I'm going to circle back around to the schools and see if they'll be willing to help out with that as well. We did get Spanish language surveys out in Woodfin Elementary, but again, I don't think we had many returned. So
Linda, can I suggest that I think I think the idea of the churches is a very good one, but I think you need to go door to door in some of the places, the mobile home parks where we know there's a high population. And the questionnaire, I have to confess, I didn't look closely at the version you sent out, and I don't know if it's different or just a translation, because I had reviewed the one before. It's just way too involved to stop at somebody's door and said, will you answer some questions for me? I am working with some of the students at Woodfin Elementary, and it just needs to be a very different approach if you want to, because I don't even know if they know they live in Woodfin. I mean, it's, they're living a difficult life.
Yeah, we were able to get flyers in people's hands at the last Manna Food Bank.
I was there when you did that.
Okay,
but
right.
Did you get any of them back?
No, I don't think so.
It's way too
We did
involved.
get a chance to, Beth was there talking to people, and that was, I think, the awareness maybe, was raised there, but we still didn't get input from them.
Well,
And we have looked at a shorter, very simple survey, open-ended survey that I think we may end up using, especially if it's, if we do some
Door to
in-person
door.
things.
Well, I would volunteer to go door to door if somebody could help identify. In fact, I'm working on another project with the fire chief right now on education. But I don't mind going door to door. But I really need it to be a questionnaire that people could answer in a matter of a couple minutes or so.
Mhm.
They're not going to give you. They don't have the luxury of having a lot of time.
I know. I did census work in some of those, not that particular communities, but similar communities. And it was hard, but usually, it just depends, if you cut the right time and there's maybe a young kid around also that can help, with explaining things. So, so ideas, I think that's the direction I think we're going to go. It's just that we're a little bit delayed on timing, but I don't think it's going to hurt the overall project timeline too much if we can get out there within the next few weeks, and try to get some of that information. I think it's going to take about the next month before we can, because of school break, because of Easter holidays, and then just the folks have been out of town that I've been working with. But thanks for those ideas and for offering your volunteering.
Linda, are you bilingual?
I am.
I am not.
I'm not a native speaker,
Oh,
which I
Glenda.
think, and I used, I use Spanish at, the kids for the most part, if they're in, third grade or so, I speak plenty, their English is quite good. But yes, I could handle a survey conversation and get answers, and yes, I can do that.
Do you have suggestions on what those questions should look like for that conversation? Because I could work.
I'd have to look at
I've
it.
got a draft that that Judy and Beth and I were looking at. I can share that with you.
That
I can
is
share with
fabulous.
Adrian. I mean,
That is fabulous. I've worked
Yeah.
with her at Manna, and yeah, if she gets involved, you've got a great participant. I mean, she's fabulous. But yes, I'd love to see it, and I'll be happy to. As I said, I'm actually working on a Red Cross safety thing to try to get into mobile home park. But I don't really think I could do both at the same time. That would not work too well, I don't think. But I would do it separately.
Let me know how I might get help, which really means coordinating with Ryan on creating handouts or consolidating the survey or whatever it is we need to help you have those conversations and get out there.
all right. Well, I'm going to keep you in the loop too, then, Adrian, and we can try to see what we can do.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on work we could do, or things we could do to engage the Latino community?
Well, this is sort of off topic, but one of the comments I was going to send you and still will. I was shocked to see we don't have mobile homes even in the consideration of the housing in that document. I mean, do we not know how many mobile homes are in Woodfin?
I just consider them single family homes.
Yeah.
There's no distinction between a site in my categorization between a site built home and a mobile home or
It said in
manufactured
the
house.
footnotes that they weren't considered in the pricing stuff.
What footnote was that?
It was in your, I'll tell you what, I'll send it to you since I would have to flip through. I made a note on it when I was rereading it. Under, when you were pricing housing and stuff, you were talking and you said in the footnote that mobile homes were not considered as part of that, and going, how can we not do mobile homes? Okay.
That was a third party group that provided that information. I don't know why they don't consider mobile homes. That again, Linda, was that from the Board of Realtors or who was that, the pricing?
That is something I got from, I have to just look and see, I have to look and see where
It's on
that, what I worked in for the
page
citation.
Page 8 at the bottom on medium value of owner occupied housing. Because, I mean, there are, beyond the parks, there are mobile homes all over Woodfin by themselves. So anyhow, I just noticed that and thought, how can we not have mobile homes?
And again, that was a third party,
I know, I'm just,
just a source of information. And we can't answer that question.
I know.
Now that you brought it up, I'm a bit perplexed too. Okay, I'm going to.
I'm going to it.
Going into the, oops, got Linda's question there. Yeah, I'm going on to the
Yeah, keep
vision
going, yeah.
statement. So unless there are any more questions on the outreach and engagement. Oops. Do this.
No, thanks. Not really. I think we probably as a project team need to kind of, revisit our schedule and think about what our next big push is for outreach, and what the timing looks like for that.
Okay. And if any of you have any thoughts on how we could expand the outreach engagement, please let us know. Happy to. And we've learned that our next drop-in meeting will have presentations. And moving on to the mission statement and values. A lot of this work was done by Will and his
Amanda.
and Amanda, right?
Amanda
And
help with this? I think she's on.
Yeah, she's on.
I think you
Amanda?
did a really good job. I had one suggestion, well rejected. But I would like to at least make my point. Under the vision statement, Woodfin is a small mountain town with, then going on. I think that implies we're Bryson City or something, and that there needs to be an additional statement. I do not consider myself a word, I'm not the most clever with words. I had put down in the midst of a booming Buncombe County, just because I think you've got to create a view that we are really part of a much bigger population surrounded by other municipalities. We're not out in the mountains all by ourselves. But that was my only issue. And if nobody else agrees, then, I'm fine.
And I understand your point about it's a small mountain town. You think of Bryson City. Is there a better descriptor that you can think of?
I just already admitted I'm not, I had added in the midst of a booming Buncombe County. I didn't consider that the best wording, by the way. I just was trying to create something that implies we are in the middle of a lot of populations, not, because I think that causes a lot of our challenges.
Yes.
So.
Do you have any thoughts, Amanda?
I think that the small mountain town could be problematic for the reasons that Glenda mentions, but it doesn't offend me or bother me in any way. I actually kind of like it, since so many people mentioned that kind of almost language in the survey, even, small town feel.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like Woodfin has a small town feel with a strong, vibrant, something like that.
Okay.
But it doesn't bother me the way it is. I think it's just fine. I feel like you all have done a good job.
And we'll keep taking comments. I'll send out an email to all the steering committee to provide comments on the vision statement by the middle of next week, so that we can move on with this aspect of it. One thing we don't have is guiding principles, and here are some. Let's see. I think these are from. I'm going to share some from. I This was from the 2009 plan, which was not adopted, and I'll send these out with these examples of guiding principles: preserve the small town quality of life, provide quality, cost-efficient municipal services, encourage and support business, protect and enhance town's natural resources, promote environmental and economic sustainability. Those again are the old ones, and here's some. Let's see.
I have no problems with any of those, except I think it's missing an emphasis on housing. And I don't, affordable housing, or I don't know what again, I don't like being the one to create the words, but I think it needs something, because that is becoming such a huge issue.
Yeah, I agree. And we can add something about providing a range of housing types or affordable housing. So we'll work on that.
You could just add housing to that last one: promote environmental, economic, and housing sustainability.
Okay. We'll try that. And if you have any more thoughts, please let us know. Again, I'll send these out. And let's see, I have some examples from now you're seeing the. These are some examples, and I think look at number 3 here: encouraging new and creative housing opportunities that meet the needs of multiple generations. That's
I like
That sounds good.
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'll highlight that one. And make sure we, and if you see any others here that you think are appropriate, it could be tweaked for Woodfin, please let us know. I'll send these out as examples and for the steering committee to think about it. Any other thoughts on the guiding principles and the vision statement?
The, livable communities uses the words, for all ages and abilities. And when you talk about, I'm thinking of the transportation and infrastructure and the housing, there may be some words around that. The multiple generations implies, for young people, older people, and in between, but that kind of is more encompassing.
Yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts or comments? Next thing on the agenda is the character area descriptions. I'll see if I have those. Okay, and here's the ones we had, and maybe we'll start this and mix up the agenda just a bit with the town center discussion. And we've received a number of comments about where the town center could be. Does the town need a center like other communities? Think of Weaverville with its downtown, Black Mountain, its downtown. Woodfin developed differently than those two communities and does not have the type of almost grid walkable downtown that the other small towns and medium-sized towns in Buncombe County and surrounding counties has. So I ask the question: is that desired for Woodfin? Glenda, what do you think?
Ask the question again, I'm sorry.
Is,
I was
is it-
trying to look at the land use stuff. Go on.
okay, caught you off guard.
Yeah, you did. I wasn't ready.
You know, when you think about Weaverville's town center,
Okay.
Black Mountain's town center, Brevard, Waynesville, it's a walkable downtown grid street system with a lot of different retail activities, commercial activities. Is that what's desired? And do you think in Woodfin, or does Woodfin need a different type of center? There was some mention
I
about
think
having
it's a
something on the river.
mixture. I think it's a mixture. I think we, I think you can mix residential and commercial and walkability, I think, is kind of important. But I thought, and I know Scott's not on today, but I thought there must be, is there not anywhere a list of things to consider for a town center that would help us think about the areas? Because we can all jump to conclusions about where it might be, but it's not like we're sitting there with the checklist going, okay, does it have that? Does it have that? I mean, I know Ken suggested we consider not having one. I mean, Woodfin has a challenge because of the, Weaverville Road, Riverside Drive. I still think Elk Mountain has possibilities if you were really looking to, have something off of these main roads. And I think you could do something in all of those areas. It really depends on what you want to achieve. And
Yeah, can I chime in a little bit here, Glenda? Since you mentioned my name, I can actually talk now, right?
I've been
Like one of those-
waiting for you, Ken.
I know.
So have
Well,
I, Ken.
I'm trying to not be the guy who has to say something, even if I don't have something to say.
Oh, you always have something to say.
That seems like it sometimes. On this one, yeah, I do have some thoughts. Part of it, and I'm rehashing some of what I've already shared in my written comments, but first off, I do think that Woodfin both has a problem and an opportunity in that we didn't grow up with a grid and a natural town center, and whether or not Reynolds was trying to be that is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't have a lot of the characteristics of a town center as much as I've been able to research. It doesn't have a lot of green space. There aren't natural gathering places, but we do have these great pockets of uniqueness. I do believe that the North Merriman Avenue thing could become a really vital commercial local business district. The river obviously is something that we have in a way that many communities do not. My overall concern is that in trying to create what you might consider a traditional town center like a Black Mountain or a Weaverville, you're competing directly with very well-established communities that are within a stone's throw. And that's not going to be probably easy to do if it's at all possible. And so I'd rather kind of fish where other people aren't fishing. And I think we have some unique things in Woodfin that the other towns cannot claim, and we should play on those. Where I think the opportunity exists is maybe rather than think of a town center, think of town locations that could be connected better through a trail system or bike trails or walking paths. So it's not a hardship to get from North Merriman over to the river, or you don't necessarily have to get in a car. And I think these would be easier infrastructure things to do than trying to carve out a space in the existing land inventory and making a new town center. I think it's very hard to force that. I think that on the other side, I think that communities like Fletcher were able to do some of that, but I also think they have a more natural setup to create a traditional town center. And I don't know enough about that. I'd had a brief conversation with Jim McAllister about that, and I think he had looked at that as a bit of an interesting model. But I think it's sort of like, let's focus on what we already have and make it better and emphasize its uniqueness. I think we'll draw more recreational and tourism dollars that way than trying to create a town center and still provide something of real high value for the residents.
Well, I think, Ken, we could do some of what you're talking about by using, the fact that there's going to be that huge greenway, but you've also got that big complex, warehouse complex that is right down from Elk Mountain Road, where we already have a lot of government focus that needs to be improved. I mean, but you have the town hall, you have the school, you have the community center, you have the fire department. And all of it is leading down to if you were talking about trying to build artists and, more of that would bring tourists, especially with the greenway also there, you could do something that leads right down. I just, if we're trying to, if we think it's important to come up with something, that I think has more future possibilities than trying to do Reynolds Village or Weaverville Road, which is.
I agree. I think
residential. You could tie residential. You could tie townhouse development. I mean, there's a whole lot of open. There's actually quite a bit of open space along Elk Mountain Road. And it would also bring something to an older neighborhood that needs, some uplifting.
Yeah, I think that's a real interesting idea. And those they're not so far apart that connecting them would be.
No, you could do what you were talking about.
Yeah. No, I like that.
But having said that, I think, I know, Gerald, you didn't think we had the budget for some of this, but I think it's really important if we come up with a concept. I also almost wish we could come up with two, that we hold community meetings and let people react to it. That's the kind of thing that's going to build the spirit in the town. And I know that a lot of people don't attend, but I think you need people to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I agree. This has to be a plan based on the desires and dreams of the people in Woodfin. I really liked Ken's idea about these almost nodes that are connected with greenways and pedestrian facilities, and biking it as well as vehicular, and take advantage of the uniqueness of Woodfin and its the items that were named along Elk Mountain Road, the town hall, the school, the community center, heading down to the old mill down on Riverside Drive, and then the recreational activities. So I'll work with the other members of the team to come up with some way of describing those. And
I know there's no money for it, but what would it cost to get an artist to do a rendering of what something like that might look like? I mean, we've already got the rendering of the greenway, and the stuff that's going there. What would it take for somebody who has a creative mind to think through what redoing Elk Mountain, going down there, and maybe even the warehouse complex? What would that cost? Does anybody know?
Kenny, do you have any ideas on that one?
I mean, it just depends on what we would be looking for. I mean, you can hire just a planner to give you like a top down, here's what the kind of the geography could look like if we're talking about new roadway connections or land use. But then if you want like a nice perspective drawing, I don't know. There's a range.
Fletcher did. Fletcher has an incredible picture, drawing of what they are going to become. It's really quite nice.
I almost feel like it might be better to kind of do that after this planning process. Like, let's figure out land use and character areas, and then you can run with that and create a vision to go along with it rather than doing that now. But you're right, having something fleshed out can really give people something to look at and visualize and say, oh yeah, I get it now. We talk about land use and density, but if you throw it up on a nice drawing, it makes a lot more sense to people.
Yeah, I think having some visuals is going to be helpful,
Mhm.
just in talk to people about it, and get them to see what the possibilities could look like. So I think we should talk about that a little bit more and see what we could come up with for that.
Amanda, you're not saying anything. What are you thinking? Does this UNCA have any departments where they might have students that would want to?
I'm mostly here as a Woodfin citizen, not as a UNCA representative. So just like to be clear about that. I love the idea of building, like trying to vision around pathways of, like Ken was saying, connecting hotspots within Woodfin. I'm pretty opposed to the language of town center and the notion for Woodfin. Even like, I don't think Reynolds Mountain is it. Like parking's terrible. It's not very accessible there. I know there's lots of buildings and lots of space and things like that, but I'm just thinking about like navigating the world with my mom, who has, several issues. And so like that would be a horrible location for town center for her. And I think for a lot of people, just because of parking and accessibility. But I love the idea of connecting the river, which is really our most valuable resource, I think, in Woodfin, and lots of people wanting the recreation there, and doing that up Elk Mountain makes a lot of sense. So I agree with what everybody has said about that. I think we could do some really cool stuff in terms of community buy-in and getting the community to even create the drawings for us, like do it like that could be one strategy for focus grouping, is like even involving young people, our students and stuff, to draw things that they would like to see in this like amazing trailway from the middle of, Woodfin down to the river. And when I say that, I think like going from, I guess what is called the Woodfin Center or whatever, where Adrian is.
Town
Yeah,
hall.
right.
Uh-huh.
Hey, what about instead of town center, calling them like activity centers? It that way you're framing it as like this is a vibrant part of the community, but it's not prescriptive about what's going on there. So it could be housing focused. It could be, Elk Mountain, where there's a lot of like schools and parks and town facilities, but it could be Reynolds Village, where it's, a little bit different. That's a thought. If we don't like town center.
Well, some places use neighborhood centers too. I mean, don't have to use the word center, but that's another way of thinking about it in a smaller way.
If there's
I do
concern
like-
regarding, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to echo something Amanda said. I do think, I don't know if anybody has been to any of the Buncombe planning community input sessions, but gathering ideas from children or from other people about how that connection might be made and what that might include, you might get some really surprising and creative answers, because most of the people that you might encounter are not going to have some of the same filters and cautions that we bring to practical concerns. You might get some ideas that really bring it to life, and then also on the flip side help sell it. So I wanted to second that motion.
Mhm.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Any other thoughts on the activity centers, nodes, how to create those spaces that are welcoming to all the, as I think as Linda said earlier, all ages and abilities. Okay. And moving on with these, there was some concern about town edge, and I thought those were good comments, Amanda, and got me thinking. And so I'm going to pull up something I tried to do to address that.
Sorry.
I don't know if this is, I just worked on late yesterday and today a transitional mixed use character area, because as I was trying to map the different character areas for the future land use map, I realized there were a lot of places where the use that was there now may not be what is envisioned for the future, but we have to allow that transition from the current use to the future use and how to address that. So I drafted this transitional mixed use. Just for some thoughts now, if this works, just for any comments you have regarding this, immediate comments, and I'll send it out for more leisurely review later. So any thoughts you have, please speak up.
Okay, it's not a thought as much as a question. As someone who is on the planning board and has seen all of the different designations, you know, of properties and areas, is this supposed to condense all of that into fewer descriptions, or what exactly is the purpose of this document?
This is just to provide guidance for policy decisions and for rezonings and even zoning ordinance amendments in the future. It is not a regulatory document. It's just again, a policy document or a guide that the planning board could use, the board of alderpersons or the town commission could use. Yes.
I would welcome Adrian's thinking about this, because she's the one that has to currently interpret the existing designations. Does this complicate, or does it simplify, or how do you see it?
Well, as Gerald said, it's kind of a policy document, so it's going to guide our future decisions on those designations. So it's not changing what we already have. It's kind of guiding what that needs to look like in the future. So as Gerald mentioned,
Or
what's
maybe
there now may
no?
not be what we want there in the future. And so this is kind of
Okay,
explaining how that needs to look and helping the planning board make those decisions.
okay. Then I guess I'm fine with it.
Yeah. And one way this has been used in the past, in my experience, was in Knoxville and Knox County, we had the requirement that the zoning be compatible with the future land use plan was a statutory requirement, and each of these character areas had, you know, anywhere from 2 to sometimes almost a half dozen different zoning designations that fit into the different character areas to provide the planning commission and staff and others with guidance and the appropriate zoning that would meet the intent or the desires of the community for the future land use of a particular area. I think that was, again, it's just an example of how the future land use map was used there, where there was a statutory requirement that the zoning matched the future land use map. And I don't think we need to go that far. But again, as Adrian said, and I said earlier, just provide some guidance for the planning board and the board of commissioners to use as they consider rezoning requests and possibly zoning amendments. Any other thoughts or questions regarding the transitional mixed use? And I think of this, you know, looking at maybe I know it would be a big change of going down Elk Mountain Road, and I forgot which street it is on the right as you're heading to the river. If you go back to the end, the warehouses and the commercial / storage uses back there is that appropriate long range use for that property? And sorry to pick on that one, but one that just comes to mind is being a bit unique. And maybe the transitional mixed use is applied there as a character area to let the planning board know that the use of that may change over the next 20 years. Any other thoughts or comments regarding this one? Since I've got it up, we'll go to another potential new character area that I identified. As I was driving around Woodfin and specifically along Riverside Drive and got to Silver Line and the properties south of Silver Line on the riverside of Riverside Drive, the more industrial. I realized we didn't have a character area that actually addressed those uses. So I quickly drafted today this morning the potential new character area for industrial to accommodate those. So 2 questions with this. One, and again, your immediate comments are welcome, but I'll send it out for more leisurely review and more thought to all the steering committee members. Do we need an industrial character area? And do you see that area where Silver Line and the other industrial type uses changing over the next 20 years to other types of uses? Any thoughts or comments?
My first reaction is, do you need both this and the transitional, or could they be collapsed into one, given that this is kind of a long range, what might happen perspective?
That's a good question. It makes me think. I'm going to defer an immediate answer and say, I think they could. Let me give it a little bit more thought. I'll think about it through tomorrow by midday and send out some revisions. I tend to think it's a good idea. If we're looking at transitioning those sites to or properties to other uses, so let me give it a bit more thought.
Great.
Any other thoughts or comments on this one? Are there any thoughts or comments with regard to what you envision or what you would like to see at the Silver Line property in 20 years? I'll take that as no comments. We'll go on back to the character areas that draft and think about the various character areas. And if you have any questions, I'm just the town edge. What I'm going to do is hopefully just strike that one out, and we'll use the transitional mixed use. So that one will be eliminated from the list of character areas and going down.
Gerald, I do have one question, and I have to apologize because I actually got double booked. So I'm going to have to leave. But one thing I don't quite understand is the relationship of the area along the river south of Silver Line to where Broadway comes in, and I think then it becomes Asheville.
That's correct.
That's where the border is, the boundary is. And the businesses and things along that, I mean, we don't have a specific relationship to them, but it's hard for me to think of them as not being part of the consideration set.
Yeah, and those are some of the properties I would think that I was referring to in coming up with the industrial character area description. Do we want those as industrial, more industrial uses in the in 20 years, or would you like to see something else there? And that's the question for the views of the steering committee and also for the community as a whole.
Right.
Worth noting that we not too long ago rezoned for those parcels from heavy industrial to community shopping. So it seems like that's kind of more the way that area, the vision for that area is more the community shopping feel, less the industry.
Okay, good. When was that rezoning done? I'm not sure that's reflected on the zoning map I have. Do you know when
You may have an old map. It should be updated now, but it might have been a year ago, but
Okay,
not longer.
okay.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, even just the presence of the Zillicoa Brewery down there kind of gives you a sense of what the area might become.
Yeah.
Right.
And I like in your description of that, like the 3-floor threshold and the requirement that there be sidewalks. I appreciated that those were in there and that.
Okay, thanks. And just going through the rest of these quickly, I'm going to move fairly fast. The corridor development is for those uses that are along the major highways, especially Merriman, Weaverville Highway, and have visibility from those corridors, access from those corridors, and more at this time automobile or vehicular oriented than pedestrian. And the Riverway mixed use commercial and small scale industrial is for the area, just what it says, the Riverway along the river, Riverside Drive, providing a wide variety of land uses, from artist studios, craft and artists and industrial, mixed uses with uses ranging from institutional to residential. And, again, a built form of maximum building height and pedestrian connectivity and some open space. And then to residential neighborhood, which is smaller neighborhoods, or lower density neighborhoods, 1 to 2.5 story buildings. And again, an emphasis on sidewalks and greenways to provide alternative modes of transportation. Residential community is a bit more densely developed, up to 10 dwelling units an acre, and would include single family homes, which include mobile homes or manufactured housing, duplexes and triplexes, townhomes, condos, and small scale multifamily. I hope you all read the article I referred to in the planning magazine about missing middle, so there's smaller scale multifamily and accessory dwelling units. And some standards for the built form that if this is ever incorporated in the zoning ordinances, provide guidance for those. And then the next one, received some comments on this, of renaming it, and I'm open to those. Residential development, which is a more dense residential development that permits or allows multifamily residential large multifamily complexes, as well as townhouse developments. Again, the pedestrian connectivity, and these would be located where the access is good near major transportation corridors. Any comments on any of those? Go on to parks and open space. And that's exactly what it said. And I do have a question with reserved lands. We've had some comments, and maybe that's preserved, or should reserved lands or preserved lands be incorporated into the parks and open space character area? Any thoughts or comments?
There's going to be some overlap with that.
Yeah, there is overlap. I noticed that. Just because of that overlap, wondered if we needed 2 separate classifications for that, since they're very similar. Any thoughts or comments?
Where do you have steep slopes?
Those would be in would be, in my thinking, the residential neighborhood, low density and cluster development with preservation of
Why
open
would
space
it-
and sensitive areas.
Why wouldn't it apply to everything? If a business.
Well, it will essentially, yeah.
It
It
would.
will essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, your regulations will, I guess. I'm just thinking some of the sensitive, preserved areas, sometimes if they're, steep, if they're important natural areas, they're, and often those are steep slopes too. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
there's some that you want to really conserve and not develop, and others that are more developable. And
Yeah.
that's where I guess that's where the difference would come with parks and
Mhm.
space versus
And,
reserve.
yeah, and preserve. And, and here's a thing I've been challenged with everywhere is applying our standard that property can't be developed because of its slope, which I think is appropriate, but some of the owners of those properties don't agree. So they have, as we get into this, there may be some further discussion of that. And I think the steep slope ordinance that the town adopted recently is a great start towards protecting those. And we'll just work with Adrian and identify areas that should be protected. Any other questions or thoughts? The last item on the agenda is or next to last is the future land use map. And this is just to provide you an update on this. I'm working on the future land use map and hope to have a draft out to you by the end of next week that will assign these character areas to different properties in the community or in the town. And what I'd like you to do is just think about how you want those properties to look and be developed or preserved in 20 years and provide your input and direction on those. And some of the questions we've raised here is Linda brought up the steep slopes, the activity nodes or centers along Elk Mountain Road and leading down to the river and even along the river. Where should those be located? Where are opportunities for the denser residential development? The residential development that's multifamily, is that?
Will we also be talking about other areas for, more recreational development?
Yes, there'll be some, and those will be mapped with the parks, open space, and maybe preserved land character area. And so,
Gerald, this is Kenny. I think that's a good a good reason to keep reserved lands and parks and open space
Right.
separate. To show that one is, hey, we don't want this to change at all. It just needs to stay undeveloped. Because parks can mean a lot of things. It could be a greenway, but it could also be a ball field or a playground or an amphitheater. So it is development. And so if we don't want it developed at all, we should keep those separate, I think.
I totally agree with that.
okay, good. We'll do that. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks, Amanda. Any other thoughts if you have any thoughts or comments that you would like to share with all of us as you consider these, please email or somehow let me know those. Are there any other comments or thoughts about the future land use map? I know I don't have anything for you yet other than the request that you look at it and consider what you'd like to see those lands be in 20 years, how they should be developed or preserved if they're environmentally sensitive.
Are you suggesting if we already know of a place that should be preserved, we should tell you, or we wait?
Yes, please let me know, please.
Okay, because I have a prime place.
Okay, let us
Plenty of
know.
park, it just needs to be purchased by somebody.
Okay. And just let me know, and that will save me having to revise the map if you'll let me know before I
Well,
designate it.
everybody's got to agree, but.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna pull the agenda back up. Our next thing is it's general discussion. So are there any thoughts, comments, items you'd like to discuss?
Is there any chance our next meeting could be in person?
I hope so.
Do you think we will need to schedule another meeting?
Are you asking the group?
I guess I'm asking Gerald. And
I think within probably about a month. And let me look again at our work schedule and activities, because I would like to be able to sit down with the committee as we review the future land use map and some of the items that come from that and get input. So let me give that some thought and look, as I said, look at our work schedule, task schedule, and
Attendance today is really sad, and I don't know if it's because it is spring break. I mean, it is. A lot of people have family plans, I imagine, this weekend, next week, but it's very sad.
we picked this day and time because it seemed like it worked for everybody, but I guess things came up between scheduling and the meeting.
Yeah.
yeah. We'll keep trying, but I'll talk to the planning team in the morning or email, and we'll come up with a date for the next meeting. But I'm thinking somewhere around a month or so from now.
Okay.
We'll plan to have it in person, Glenda, unless something changes.
I'd like to actually see people. I still might wear a mask, but
And we had our Parks and Greenway Committee meeting outside at the Silverline, at the not quite completed Silverline Park yesterday afternoon.
Cool.
And that was pleasant to actually see people and be out at the park. It was in the pavilion. So if the weather's nice, we could even think of something like that for our next meeting.
I like that idea.
Okay. Our next steps are to create the future land use map, to get a final version of the plan intro and infrastructure background sections, to draft the community input section and start thinking about goals and recommendations, as well as working on the outreach and engagement of the Latino community. I think that's about it. Adrian, Linda, Kenny, can you think of any other tasks that are in the immediate future?
No.
No, not on my end. Future land use mapping. That's kind of our next one.
Okay. Any other comments from the thoughts from the committee members?
a question, that the survey response, did that get posted somewhere? Because I printed other stuff, but I don't think I've seen that where you could actually, spend time looking it over. Is it somewhere that?
I thought I sent it to everyone, but I may not have. I'll email that to all the committee members, and we'll
Okay.
work with Ryan and Adrian to get it posted on the website also.
Okay, I just would like to spend more time looking at it.
Okay, so I think some of the comments, the individual responses are very interesting and informative.
Gerald, can I ask a question? On
Sure.
the survey, did we indicate to our participants that information was going to be made public? like the individual comments, because that can be a breach of confidentiality, actually.
Well,
The
anything that,
individual comments. Now, the summative ones, totally, we have all rights to share, but
I'm not sure, but I do know that anything that comes to a public entity like the town about, within its public information, unless they're protected by personnel issue or personnel policies, if they're medical, there are a few exceptions, but anything else is public. If it's sent to the town, then it's public information, becomes public information.
okay.
And we can talk about how to frame it in the plan document itself. I mean, I like to include all those comments in an appendix, just so that they're there for the record. But if there's any mention of specific people or properties that might be sensitive, we can strike through anything that's like specific. If they're calling out their neighbor about something, we'll disguise that, but keep the comment in there. And none of the comments will be attributable to a specific person. It'll just be an anonymous comment.
Mhm.
That was a good question. Thanks, Amanda. But it's that's why when you work for local government, you're very cautious in the emails you send. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay. Well, thank you, and and go out and enjoy the beautiful evening.
I'm going to. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.